travelers, and welcome to Go See, Do, Explore.
Here, we dive deep into the heart of travel, sharing hidden gems, unforgettable experiences, and the stories that make each destination unique.
Whether you're a seasoned traveler or dreaming of your next getaway, you're in the right place to get inspired.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And together, we'll set the course for your next great adventure and discover the stories that make each place unforgettable.
It's time to go, see, and do more. Let's explore. Hello, we're back with another episode, and this time we are talking about traveling without a checked bag, going carry-on only, if you will. And I don't know about you, but all the traveling that I did as a kid always involved big suitcases, lots of stuff, going to the counter and putting it on the belt and then seeing it disappear and then having to stand around the little thing when you get to your destination and watch all the bags swirling around. There's another way to travel besides that, and I dare say it might be better.
I like that description. Those suitcases, you had to carry them, right? So they didn't roll, maybe.
I had a rolling suitcase when I was pretty little.
Okay.
Then my dad got it from a record company.
Okay.
But anyway, we're going off the rails here. I feel like it said like Sony Records or something on it. But so the first time we ever traveled without a checked bag, we were going to Phoenix for a conference, and we were just going to be there for a long weekend. And so we went online and we bought carry-on bags. With just our little carry-on bags and a backpack, we had enough stuff for a long weekend, and we realized that it was so much easier to do that.
Yeah, maybe that seems obvious, but I had never flown that way before. I hadn't flown that many times, honestly, before that trip compared to now, but it was really nice. We'll talk about all the reasons why in a minute.
There's so many people out there that are like, you have to travel carry-on only, or you're not a real traveler, and those people are annoying, and I don't want I don't want to be that. But I want to tell you why, if you are still taking a giant heavy suitcase and going through all those steps, how you might be able to make your travel much easier.
Yeah, it makes the whole airport and airline process just a lot easier, and you realize in many cases how much you can get by without, which makes your travel experience easier usually in general.
Yeah. We did 3 weeks in Europe last year with just a carry-on and a backpack. At some point it may have become more than that, but then we were able to condense it down again by the time we had to fly. So I guess I just want to say that even longer trips are possible. Before we get started, I did want to say that we don't always do carry-on only. We're not those people, like somebody we saw at the travel show who was like, oh, I got married and I discovered my wife needs to have a checked bag. And he was very upset about it. We're not those kind of people. Sometimes the situation arises where we do need to check a bag.
If you're flying Frontier, they charge $80 for a carry-on.
It hurts.
The one situation where we'll check.
Yeah, the budget airlines, the carry-on bags can be significantly more than a checked bag. It'll be like $40, which is still absurd. $40 for a checked bag. But if you want to bring that bag on the plane, it's going to cost you $75. Yeah.
I just booked Spirit today, and it was $40 for checked, $50 for carry-on. So we did $50 for carry-on. We had reasons to do that. But yeah, I mean, you pay a premium.
Mm-hmm. And the other reason is sometimes we like wine and we like to travel for wine. And sometimes we like to bring wine back from our travels. So obviously, in this current day and age, you cannot travel with that much liquid in your carry-on bag. So if you are planning to bring back liquids, whether it be, when you're going to the Caribbean and you want to bring back rum, or going to Mexico and want to bring back tequila, you're going to need to check a bag. Or the other option, if you have a direct flight, would be going through the duty free. A lot of times, especially in Puerto Rico, we discovered we really like Ron del Barrilito. I'm sorry for my bad Spanish, but it's a Puerto Rican rum. It was a couple dollars more in the airport duty free than it was from buying it at the distillery.
$4, I think.
We were able to not have to check a bag. Mm-hmm. So just something to think about. Obviously, if you have connections in there, Sometimes people have said that they're able to get, if they have the sealed duty-free bag, you're able to get through the airport no problem. But then other times people have said that they're not. And obviously, if you have to go out a terminal and come back, you're
yeah. I don't think you could get through security with it.
No, I don't think so.
You could connect if you're staying airside for sure, but no, I don't think you could go through security.
That's one reason when you might want to have a checked bag. Putting that aside, here are the reasons why we think it's a really good idea and how it changed the way we travel, switching to being carry-on only.
Yeah, the first reason why we like to travel carry-on only is because it's easier. As we mentioned, basically your bag never leaves you. So that means you don't have to go to the desk and hand it to someone who sends it into darkness. You don't have to wait at the baggage claim or the spinny thing, as you said. You go through security, you get on the plane with your bag, you put your bag in the bin, you take your bag off the plane, and you leave the airport, and that's it. So maybe it seems simple, but you get to skip a few steps, and it really speeds things up.
And we found on our Europe trip last year that it was so much easier to get around on the trains when you don't have a big suitcase. The trains don't typically have a ton of space for large, kind of checked size suitcases. There might be 1 or 2 racks at the back of the car, and then most of the rest of the luggage goes above you, like in a plane situation. But then also, not just getting around on trains, you're not typically traveling in Europe isn't so much like the US where you get out of your hotel, get into a car and go to the airport. There's a lot of walking uphill on cobblestone streets. And if you have a big heavy bag, especially, that's going to be very uncomfortable. I can't even imagine trying to lift it onto the train and all of that.
When we got off the cruise ship in Lisbon last year, we had to walk, I don't know, probably half a mile with our bags to where we were leaving them. And yeah, if we had giant suitcases coming off of a cruise ship, that would have been tough.
So we mentioned before that with budget airlines, sometimes it costs even more than a checked bag to have a carry-on. But if you are traveling on a legacy carrier, most of the times a carry-on is included. Now, sometimes because of this, a lot of people have carry-on bags need to go in the overhead bin. And if you don't get on the plane quickly, your bag might have to be checked. There was a few times that we were traveling on smaller planes and they did what they called valet checking your bag, where you went up the jetway and they took them. And then when you got off the plane, you just waited in the jetway. And that was really nice.
That's usually on planes that don't have overhead bin space for roller bags, like smaller regional jets like Embraers and jets like that. They have to take those roller bags. But I wanted to mention United is the exception to this. Right now, of the U.S. carriers, Delta and American, you can have a carry-on at any class of fare. But United, if you book their lowest class, I don't remember what they call it, if it's basic economy or whatever they call it, you do not get a carry-on. And I don't think you can even pay for a carry-on. I think you just have to upgrade to the middle, whatever their main cabin type thing is. Mm-hmm. But you can valet check sometimes. Sometimes you'll be forced to gate check, and that can be a reason to make sure that you're in a boarding group that gets called earlier, whether that's by joining the loyalty program or however you can manage that, because they'll basically run out of space and then you may be forced to gate check. This can also be a little bit of a hack, though. This is a little bit beyond the main point of this episode. But if you do already have a bag that you have paid to check and you have a second bag that can be a carry-on, but you don't mind checking it too, a lot of times if you carry it to the gate at the right time, you can just ask the gate agent if they will check the bag for you, and they'll do it for free. And so it can be a way to get out of a checked bag fee if you're willing to carry your bag all the way to the plane. And if they can't, then you carry it on and that's fine.
And especially if you have a layover, it can be really handy. So then you're not having to carry it through another airport to another gate up into another overhead bin. It's a little hack there. So if you do decide to bring a carry-on bag on one of those budget airlines, a lot of times that'll put you in a higher boarding group. So you'll get priority boarding or whatever the airline calls it. so that people with the carry-on bags board first, which is a nice perk. And I honestly think that this is a better way to board a plane so that people that don't have the bags in the bins don't have to be stuck behind waiting for people to put their bags in the bins. I just think that's the first time I saw Spirit or Frontier do that. I was like, that's actually really ingenious. Obviously, they're not doing it for ease of boarding or anything like that. They're doing that to make sure that you paid for your bag. But still, I think it's a little more convenient, a little better boarding process.
Great. Why don't we take a wine break? We're back for the wine break. This week we have another Michigan wine. Not a huge surprise probably, but this is called Uba, I think. Ooba. It's from a winery called Modales, and Modales is in Fenville, Michigan. Fenville is in southwest Michigan. The episode when we talked about Hickory Creek, this is close to that. Lake Hickory Creek is in the Lake Michigan Shore AVA. This wine is from the Fenville AVA. Fenville is a really small AVA. It exists entirely inside the boundaries of the Lake Michigan Shore AVA, but it is a distinct AVA with a distinct soil type. And so Uba is an experimental wine. It is a red wine. They describe it as a brut red, but it's not sparkling. And the notes on the bottle say Uba is whimsical for grapes, experimental and playful, but with underlying depths. Whimsy isn't devoid of meaning, it plays with it. So anyway, I bought this a year ago and I couldn't remember what it was like. And it is definitely like more on the craft experimental side, not a wine that really tastes like highly polished mass market wine. It's got some almost like a natural kind of a flavor to it. You can taste sort of those fermentation flavors. It's dry, of course, and nice and light, though. I think good for warm weather. If you're looking for red wines that are good for warm weather, something like this is great.
I feel like it'd be really good with some club soda spritzer.
Yeah. I think that maybe like half and half. You wouldn't want to go too far, but yeah, I think so.
Or, a little fancier. Put some sparkling wine in.
Wow. We'll have to try that.
I don't know. What's that? The French 75, the cocktail, like where they add Prosecco or something. I just feel like it needs some bubbles.
It needs some bubbles because it's a brut.
Because it's brut, it needs to have bubbles.
The power of suggestion and words. But we wanted to have this one today because we hadn't talked about Fenville yet. And Modales is probably my favorite winery in that AVA. They've got a nice tasting room, nice property on the farm there, close to Lake Michigan.
Not far from Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so if you're in the area, that's a good one. It's funny, we were just in California a few weeks ago. We'll talk more about that later, but we went to one of our favorite wineries in Sonoma. And the server at that winery was telling us that she was familiar with Michigan wine because someone who used to work there just recently went to work at a winery in Michigan, and we were trying to figure out which one it was, and it was Modales. It was really funny. Anyway, yeah, good Michigan wine here.
So back to traveling with only a carry-on. And probably the biggest concern when packing carry-on only is how are you going to have enough clothes, right? And I have to say, a lot of people, when they take bigger suitcases, unless you're going somewhere that's super cold weather and you need your snow boots and your snow pants and your coat and all that stuff, you're probably overpacking. So
or maybe a better way of saying it is that you can get by with less.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It's not some people truly are overpacking.
I know, I have definitely overpacked.
But I think what I've realized is that even normal packing is usually more than you need, and you can make alternate plans to make sure that you have everything you need with less, right?
I know you have bought some travel-specific clothing.
Yeah, I really want to do more of that, but I can never quite pull the trigger on it. It seems really frivolous to have clothes only for travel. But it's really nice to have clothes that are lightweight, quick drying, and that will be ready to pack at any moment.
They're nice too because you don't have to worry about them wrinkling, so you don't have to worry about finding an iron wherever you are or any of that. And they also pack down pretty small, which is
That's
nice.
a big part of it. And they're light.
Mm-hmm. Especially for men's clothes. I feel like
oh my gosh, yeah.
Women, we tend to be smaller than men, and then our clothing tends to be less than men's clothes. So I feel like it's even harder for men to go carry on only.
Yeah. Shoes in particular, this is one I haven't quite cracked yet, is I really would like on a lot of trips to bring a nice pair of dress shoes. And they are huge and they weigh a ton, and you can't fold down a shoe. It's a big shoe. And so I've had to compromise in the shoes that I bring, and it would be nice to solve that one.
Another way that you can minimize the amount of clothes that you bring is to mix and match outfits. I'm not really an outfit person to begin with, but don't bring the shirt that has to go with these specific pants. Instead, have several tops that can be mixed with several bottoms, whether they be pants or shorts or skirts, and mix it that way. And when you were talking about shoes, if at all possible, women avoid the high heels because they take up a lot of space. Instead, invest in a pair of flats. I will admit I splurged a few years ago on a pair of expensive flats. I have a pair of teaks, but they pack down to be absolutely nothing. The size of my hand, these shoes pack down, and they're actually pretty comfortable for walking around in. So I bought them, I think in 2021, and I'm getting ready to pack them for their third summer vacation. So they were expensive, but for travel, they're really great. Another thing that helps with packing less is just planning to do laundry. If possible, find lodging that has at least a washer. We were actually recently discussing the fact that in Europe, people don't have dryers in their homes. They have a hanger that goes outside the house or something that's inside the house, but at least has a washing machine, or a hotel that has laundry facilities. And if that's not available, plan on doing some sink laundry.
I'm pretty good at sink laundry.
We have gotten pretty good at sink laundry, although I will say after our last trip, our Airbnb in Porto, I swear it had a washing machine when I booked it. It did not have a washing machine. So we got really good at sink or tub laundry. I was doing some laundry in the bathtub at that one. But when I got home and actually gave everything a good wash, it felt so much cleaner. Yeah. It did the job in the moment, but it's not the end all be all. It won't be as clean as coming out of a washing machine.
Yeah, with sink laundry, one thing we recommend are buying the sheets, the laundry sheets that you can buy now for soap rather than a liquid soap. Not only is it not a liquid then that you have to worry about, but it's also really easy to kind of ration the right amount, because those are meant for loads of laundry, but you can tear them in half or tear them into thirds or whatever is appropriate. That's one trick that works really well. Another trick that I picked up last summer was, before hanging clothes to dry, if you've washed them in the sink or in the bathtub or something like that, if you have an extra towel or a couple extra towels that are dry, putting those clothes into the towels, the wet clothes, and then squeezing them into the towels before you hang them to dry takes a lot of moisture out. And we were on a cruise ship. There was basically an endless supply of towels. We were able to dry the clothes. And then between that, having relatively quick drying clothes and then hanging them for a day or so, pretty much everything was dry.
When thinking about doing sink laundry on a cruise, one thing that I brought with us that was really helpful, two things actually. I had magnetic hooks that hung on the wall, because in a cruise ship cabin, there's really not a lot of places to hang things. And this is one of those tips that you'll see in cruise Facebook groups and the message boards and everything. Everybody will say, oh, make sure you have magnet hooks. And the first time that we cruised, I brought them and I was like, I think I hung our daily newsletter on it. I'm like, why did I bring this for? But when we started doing laundry, they were a lifesaver. And on top of that, I also brought foldable hangers, which might seem silly because you have hangers in your cruise ship stateroom. But they're the kind, in most cruise ships anyway, where the hook part that hangs on the rod, if you try to take them out of the closet, you only get like the triangle part. And then that's really hard to hang outside of the closet. The hand gestures that I'm doing right now, I'm sure are very helpful for people who are listening to this podcast. The foldable hangers are probably not something I would bring on our next Europe trip, or really most trips. But for doing laundry in a cruise environment, they were very helpful.
One thing that we've been using for the past couple years that has been really helpful for carry-on only travel and for travel in general is the use of packing cubes. And so if you haven't seen packing cubes, they're basically these fabric or plastic cubes that you put your clothes into. You zip them in, you zip your clothes into these cubes, and then there's usually a compression zipper too. So you can get the clothes in there, they're nice and compact, and then you can make them even more compact. If you've ever packed your clothes in Ziploc bags or whatever, this is like a better version of that. Another thing that is often recommended is to roll your clothes, and I have been a big roller of clothes for a long time. This is my default way of packing. And so you should definitely try that if you haven't. However, I will say I recently learned with the particular packing cubes that I have, I actually find that they function better when I try to fold my clothes so that they take up as much of the surface area of the packing cube as possible rather than rolling them. Because if I fold a shirt so it's going to basically spread out across the entire packing cube and then I stack things like that, I find in my packing cubes that the compression works a lot better than if I have rolls, because the rolls don't compress that much. And then there's a lot of air in between those rolls. So I've actually stopped rolling clothes. But in general, it is a helpful thing to do. And I don't know that your packing cubes work that same way.
No, so my packing cubes, they don't have the compression feature.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it's really funny when I heard people saying, oh, you need to get packing cubes. It's going to totally change the way you pack your suitcase. I was like, how? I don't understand. How is this going to help me? But seriously, I'm able to pack so much more in such a smaller space. And mine aren't even the compression kind. It's just something about the way it holds everything together. And then another nice thing about packing cubes too is that you can put certain outfits together, or you could even do, this is my clothes for Monday. These are my clothes for Tuesday. These are my clothes for Wednesday. It's just a really helpful organizer, and there's more hand gestures.
I'm imagining you put your clothes like in a bin for Monday and a bin for Tuesday. Yeah, I'll do that though too. Especially I find that if I have clothes for a hotel night in transit or something like that, they're always in a separate packing cube. These are my clothes that I need for this one night of airport hotel or whatever. I always do that now. When we took the train, I had my train clothes in different packing cubes than the clothes I wore when we were off the train.
Probably for me, the hardest part about traveling with only a carry-on is the limits on liquids. I'm sure most ladies have similar needs where the hotel shampoo and conditioner is just terrible for your hair. You want to bring your own, and then you've got your face wash and moisturizer and makeup and all that stuff. As much as you can, try to find dry versions of toiletries. For example, I use Clinique Cosmetics, and the soap that I use, there is a bar soap version that would then not count into my liquids. Or if you're someone that uses dry shampoo, also those travel size dry shampoo, I swear it's 2 or 3 uses and it's gone. There is dry shampoo powder that wouldn't count towards your liquids. Obviously, regular bar soaps. There's dry shaving cream. Now, there are a lot of options to take things that you need out of your liquid restrictions. And then besides that, look for TSA approved toiletry kits. I have one. For the longest time, I was very opposed to being the person that's pouring my shampoo into bottles. And it just sounded like a lot of time and not a lot of fun. And sometimes it can be very messy. But lately, I've been really trying to cut down on single-use plastics and things like that. I bought this toiletry kit. The containers are not round. They're all meant to fit together. And it really allows me to bring more without taking up more space. So that's really nice.
Yeah, it's that round versus flat thing again. Just like I was talking about.
Yeah.
Basically.
Instead of buying the small little toiletries at the grocery store, buy this kit, then fill it up with the stuff that is really probably what you prefer to use anyway.
I think one of the differences too is that you used to fly once every couple of years, and now you fly like multiple times in a year. So having just a go-to bag of airline carry-on toiletries is much more of a reasonable thing to do and,
That's true.
And to maintain.
That's true.
You weren't going to fill that thing once every couple of years or whatever.
And then it's been 3 years, the shampoo's gone rancid or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the answer is get yourself a toiletry kit and then fly more, right?
And then you will fly more.
You will fly more because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
There is good news on the horizon there too, that it seems like the TSA is now trialing new equipment that will allow the liquid restrictions to be relaxed somewhat. They're piloting this in Denver for sure. And you've seen these, if you've been in an airport in the past few months, you've seen these new MRI machines in a lot of the TSA screening checkpoints. And so hopefully this will get easier soon.
Yes. And also, if you need a large quantity of something, for example, sunscreen, like when we went on our cruise last summer that then was a week and a half in Europe, obviously 3 weeks, you're going to need more than just the 3 ounces of sunscreen. Just pick it up when you arrive in your destination.
Yeah, I think we used exactly one bottle of sunscreen.
We used exactly one bottle of sunscreen. I think we went to use it that last day in Iceland, which I don't know what the UV rating is like in Iceland, but I didn't get burnt. But we went to use it that day and it was gone.
Yeah.
But that can be very handy. And then if you're staying at vacation rentals, one of the last vacation rentals we stayed at, there were like 8 different sunscreens in the bathroom. So obviously people didn't use it all and they left it behind. Obviously that doesn't work so much in a hotel, but if you're in a vacation rental, hey, do you need a bottle of shampoo? Here you go.
Another thing you can consider doing is wearing your heaviest or bulkiest clothes and shoes. It's not always practical, but that's one way to minimize what has to go into your carry-on is just wear that coat on the plane or
bulky sweater.
Layer up. Hopefully it's not 90 degrees out. You're flying to Antarctica or something, but yeah.
Shoes especially though, because those, I think about when we went to Alaska and I had hiking boots, like that takes up a ton of space in your suitcase.
I don't want to wear hiking boots on a plane.
I didn't wear my hiking boots on a plane, but if we were going carry-on only, I probably would have dealt with it.
Yeah.
Can you tie your hiking boots to the outside of your suitcase?
It'd definitely make you take those off.
So I think those are our tips for how to actually travel with a carry-on only. I promise it's doable and it is better.
For our destination spotlight today, we are going to talk a little bit about our recent trip to San Francisco. We covered in a previous podcast how we got to San Francisco, which was by Amtrak, but we stayed a couple days in San Francisco. And so we'd like to tell you a little bit about it. The first thing I want to mention is that we ended up staying at a hotel that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the Citizen M. We haven't talked about Citizen M on the podcast before. The company, I believe, started in the Netherlands. So it's a European hotel chain. It has been in the US for a few years now. I first stayed at one in downtown Los Angeles for work in 2022. Since then, I have stayed at Citizen M 3 more times, 1 more time for work and 2 times for personal too. It is an awesome hotel. What's great about it is that it is really nice, really comfortable, like nice, clean rooms, good beds, amazing lounge areas with bars and like interesting, weird art and stuff like that.
Emphasis on the weird.
Yeah, I like it. And then usually they're in downtown areas or areas where the comparable hotels in terms of the level of luxury are way more expensive. And the way that Citizen M manages to do this is that the rooms themselves are very small.
Kind of cruise shippy.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a cruise ship stateroom. They're very comfortable, but they're very small. And so they can pack a lot of people into these hotels. And basically what they'll tell you is that's why they have these huge lounges. The one in Chicago has this big outdoor balcony not far from Millennium Park. And so I love staying at Citizen M. It's always very comfortable and just a fun experience. Now, with 2 people in the room, it can be tight, and you have to plan a little bit in terms of where luggage is going to go and things like that. But there are drawers, and there's a little bit of a coat rack situation. It's doable, for sure.
probably the most uncomfortable part of the Citizen M with two people is the bathroom. It is all glass and kind of in the middle of the room. It's frosted glass, but there's really not a lot of privacy there.
There is a curtain divider between the bathroom and the bedroom area too.
And it's just, I don't know, that part is odd to me, the bathroom. And like when we were staying in Seattle and you had to get up early to work, when you turned the light on in the bathroom because it's glass, it lit up the whole room. And that was just...
It wasn't that. It was that when I came back, because the room is all wired up, when you open the door, the lights go on. These rooms are really high tech. There's an iPad that you use to control lights and your curtains and your TV and all that. It's really fun. But two people should probably get up at roughly the same time.
I enjoy the Citizen M experience. It has a distinct smell too, which is, I don't know what cleaning products they use, but I walked in the door the first time, the one in San Francisco. I'm like, oh, we're in a Citizen M. Like, it just hits you. And I'm not saying any of this is a bad thing, but just some things to be aware of if you're traveling with more than one person. If you're a business traveler traveling by yourself,
it's perfect.
It's perfect. The rooms are small and the bathroom is weird and the lights are weird. That's all I'm saying.
It's kind of fun. Yeah.
Obviously, I gave in to staying there a second time.
The price was amazing.
And
the location was really good too.
So after we got breakfast our first day in San Francisco, we went to a coffee shop and got, was it an almond croissant that was enormous but delicious? And very carby. I was hungry a little bit later, but that was good. And so after that, our first kind of touristy thing, because this was a touristy weekend, we managed to do most of the big attractions, I guess you would say, in San Francisco. The first thing we hit was the cable car, the Citizen M was very close to where the two big cable car routes start or end, depending on which way you're thinking about it. So we had a little bit of a wait because it was about lunchtime, maybe 10 or 11, something like that. So people had gotten up and gotten out. When we walked by, when we were on our way to breakfast, it was like 2-3 people waiting. I guess we should have gone down to Fisherman's Wharf at 8 a.m. So we waited in the line for the cable car, and then we wanted to make sure we got the right one because there were 2 different cable car lines that start at this one spot. So when we got up to the front, we realized that we wanted to make sure we got on, I don't remember if it was the green line, but we wanted to make sure we were getting on the right one that went to Fisherman's Wharf. And it was a really cool experience. I'm very glad we did it. Since we were the first ones on the car, we got to hang on the outside, and that was scary, but also cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's allowed. It seems pretty dangerous, actually.
When one person falls off and gets run over, it won't be allowed anymore. Yeah. So we rode the cable car all the way down to Fisherman's Wharf, which is probably one of the biggest, most well-known areas in San Francisco.
And it's a tourist spot for sure.
Oh, it's a tourist spot, but it's one of those tourist spots that people want to go there for a reason. It's got the history of the fishing and lots of restaurants, which nowadays I feel like you really have to look and see if the restaurants are good or if they're just in a tourist location. But we actually found one of the kind of older, more historic places that had a little outside stand, and we got some clam chowder and a bread bowl, which was really good.
Yeah, and not Applebee's. I thought you were going to say Applebee's.
And we listened to this guy with his street music.
Steel drum.
The one. It
was mostly recorded.
The one steel drum that he just beat occasionally. I feel like I should tell this story because so anytime we are traveling in a city and there is a street musician, I'm always reminded of the time when we were in Boston and we did a Freedom Trail tour through the National Park Service, and our guide was trying to talk. She was a scholar about Paul Revere, and she's trying to tell us about Paul Revere, and there's a bucket drummer, and she stops and sighs, and she says, "I don't think this is what the framers of the Constitution had in mind." And anytime I see street artists, that is what I'm reminded of. I don't think this is what the founding fathers had in mind. But anyway, so after we walked Fisherman's Wharf, we made our way to the San Francisco Aquarium of the Bay, I believe it's called. And this was a place that we actually got a deal on Groupon, which was cool, which I always forget that Groupon is a thing. But if you are traveling in a city, it doesn't hurt to pull up the Groupon app and see what discounts are out there. It might be for something you want to do. And probably my favorite thing about the aquarium was the otters.
Yeah. So that lower floor was really fun with all the different sharks and fish.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff.
You get to walk under, like it was like a shark tunnel.
Yeah.
Once again, hand gestures.
After that, we walked to Ghirardelli Square.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. It's not on my outline here.
Yeah, and got the giant ice cream.
Yeah, it was like a mint chocolate chip and it was really good. And I'm really glad because the last time we were in San Francisco, we just went in the first little store, the Ghirardelli store. And which is just like a takeaway, like a counter service thing. And then we got hot chocolates and we were on our way. But we went a little farther into Ghirardelli Square this time. And I think it was the main food service part anyway. And it was really cool. As we were waiting for our ice cream, we walked around looking for a table and they have a spot inside where you can eat your ice cream inside like a cable car, which I thought was cool. And then we were seated just a few steps away from this giant block of chocolate that was like melting, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it was cool looking.
Chocolate fountain.
Yeah, it was like this big block chocolate fountain. That was really cool.
From there, I decided that we would just walk because we had some time to kill. And so we walked towards the Presidio. We didn't make it all the way there, but we walked through Fort Mason, which is formerly a fort, military fort, is now part of the National Park Service. And it seems like it's part of Golden Gate Recreation Area. It seems like they have dorms there for, I think, National Park Service workers is what it looked like to me. I don't know that for sure. Probably we could look it up.
Yeah, it looked like it was a place that people could stay too.
Maybe.
Yeah, we'll do some research on that. But it was a nice walk and it was a pretty warm day. Being able to get out of the mass of Fisherman's Wharf, and there were not a lot of people there, and I'm sure most of them were locals.
No, we were with the locals walking their dogs and stuff like that. It was really windy though.
Yes.
I remember it was warm but windy.
So after our walk, part of the reason we did the walk was that we had bought tickets for a Golden Gate Bridge boat tour, and we had time to kill before it was our slot, which then I discovered I actually made the tickets for 2 days later. But it was okay. They let us in. The tour was pretty interesting. It was very windy. And even though it was nice and warm on the shore, it got very cold. I was glad that we were prepared with appropriate clothing. Although there was a moment where I was like, I think I need hat and gloves.
I think I was still cold. I was still cold even with a heavy coat.
The tour did have some kind of history narration, but it was, I would say, subpar. It was just pre-recorded. There were some characters. It would have been much more interesting if they actually had somebody who was pointing out sites to you and talking to you. But I guess that's what I get for buying a boat tour on Groupon. Overall, it was really fun. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we did it, especially because when we were in San Francisco last year, our ship sailed under the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was a really cool experience. But Chris was teaching a class at the time, so we didn't get to experience it together.
That was also a cool experience, though, teaching a class and seeing the Golden Gate Bridge out the window.
After our boat tour, we warmed up by going to dinner at a restaurant in Chinatown called China Live, which is a modern Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. Last year when we were in San Francisco, one of the things I really wanted to do is I really wanted to explore Chinatown because there's not really anything like that where we live. No. And with San Francisco having America's first Chinatown, it felt like a good place to learn about the culture. And our tour was really cool. It was a small group. I think there were 5 of us total.
There's 4 of us.
But the tour was really interesting because our guide was a local. He grew up in Chinatown and talked about the history. And then he also took us to some really good dim sum places, which we were trying to find and later. And we had a really hard time finding them. Like, it was only a year. This shouldn't be this hard.
This is actually a good tip, is if you go on a guided tour to a place that you want to come back to, I don't know, use Google Maps or something and put pins in your phone or something to, because we wandered around aimlessly for a while just trying to reorient ourselves.
We did end up at a Chinese bakery and we got some egg custard tarts that were really good. Mm-hmm. So our last day in San Francisco, we kind of wanted to get off the beaten path. So we went to the Mission District and we saw, what is the name of the mission?
San Francisco de Asís.
Which is a historic mission in San Francisco. And it was beautiful. There was lots of beautiful architecture, beautiful artwork. I should mention that there were maybe 2 or 3 other people walking around. It was, especially when you compare it to Fisherman's Wharf a few days earlier, like you want to see San Francisco that the tourists don't see. It was a pretty cool place to visit.
Yeah. We took the BART train, it's just outside of downtown and really easy to get to.
And then probably the other big thing that we wanted to accomplish in San Francisco is we wanted it to get a real mission-style burrito.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about what a mission-style burrito is and why you were on a quest?
A mission-style burrito, probably the easiest way to describe it is it's what those burritos at Chipotle and Qdoba are trying to be. It's much better than those, but it's that. It's a giant flour tortilla.
Stuffed with rice and beans.
With rice and beans and usually meat or whatever you want. And so we went to Pancho Villa, which is one of the ones that is known. There's one that's the original and more famous, and the name is eluding me right now. But we went to Pancho Villa. It was really good, really fun experience waiting in line and watching them prep all the burritos. They had agua frescas, which were really great as well. And we got to just order and sit down and eat.
It definitely seemed like the kind of place where the locals were eating. Like the people that came in all seemed like guys that were on their lunch break from their construction jobs or whatever. It was a really cool experience, unlike the Fisherman's Wharf with all the tourists. It was really cool. I definitely recommend if you're in San Francisco and you have time, definitely make your way to the Mission District.
And there's more to do than we did too. There's a lot of street art and you can take street art tours. And there's also a really nice park by the Mission too that we didn't go to. So you can do even more than we did.
Yeah, we had some limited time because we had a flight coming up, but then got delayed. So then we spent a lot of time sitting in that common area at Citizen M and then the airport. So yeah, that was a little overview of some of the highlights of San Francisco. Every time we've been there, I've enjoyed it. And I always leave feeling like there is still so much more to see.
Yeah, a lot of what we did this past time, as we mentioned, were the really touristy things. We did that on purpose because we wanted to have those experiences. But we haven't done Alcatraz, which is one that everyone always tells us we should do. And then I'm sure there are other less touristy things that we really should do.
And I know I want to spend a lot more time in Napa and Sonoma as well.
Sonoma especially, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a topic for another day.
Sure. Thanks for listening. That's all for today's episode of Go, See, Do, Explore. Thank you for joining us and sharing in the wonder of travel.
Keep the spirit of today's adventure alive by checking out our blog at goseedoexplore.com for even more travel inspiration.
Don't forget to rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps fellow travelers find us and join our community.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep traveling by any means necessary.
I'm Christopher.
And I'm Ashleigh, bidding you farewell and happy exploring.